everybody, welcome back to another Blind Tuesdays. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Hopefully I'll keep this one short and sweet because this week we're doing superhero once again, and I had there's a few that came to mind, a few films here and there. We did a Marvel film last time, so as a counterpoint, I wanted to do a DC film, and there's a few films that I could have gone with, and I thought to do something interesting. This film I've actually reviewed already. I reviewed it when it came out, and I figured to kind of give a impressions now a few years later. Now I've seen I revisited a few scenes just to kind of get my memory up and going. I kind of sat with the film now for a few days. Usually I do with films, I usually sit with them for a few days, let my thoughts kind of marinate. And in the case of the Batman, having scenes available online, I just kind of let my memory kind of soak in and then kind of watch the film and select scenes and select bits to kind of get my general impressions and to see if anything has changed or perhaps I remain the same. But there have definitely been some changes. Um, so, um, so I am reviewing once again The Batman, which was released in 2022, directed by Matt Reeves, who we've discussed many times on this channel recently, actually, being helmed the recent Planet of the Apes films, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, as well as War for the Planet of the Apes, both of which I really enjoy. Also director of Cloverfield, and he's done something else, but I forget. But those are his most notable pieces of work. Um, this stars Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne slash Batman in his early years as Batman, a year or two to be precise. So he's a very young Batman. As far as I can tell, doesn't even go by the name Batman yet by the public eye. He is known as Vengeance. And he's taking out criminals. The film starts out with a sequence showing him taking out criminals in a more of a brutal manner than we would know Batman to handle criminals. And a case is now looming with the Riddler at the center of it, played by Paul Dano. And Batman, or Vengeance as he is called, comes in with Commissioner Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, to help figure out the case, to help figure out where Riddler is hiding, and that leads him to meeting with people such as Catwoman, played by Zoe Kravitz, Penguin, played by Colin Farrell, who you would not recognize at all under all that makeup, and it takes him on a mystery to unravel the case of where the Riddler is and who his next victim might be, and what his personal motives are in doing all of these crimes. And potentially the connections that are between the two, between Batman and the Riddler. So, this is yet another reboot, another reimagination of the Batman character, as Batman himself has now gone through many incarnations in the live action medium. I mean, it takes it all the way back to the Adam West version back in like the 60s, and then he was completely reinvented in the live action medium with the Tim Burton version, and then completely removed from the live action medium with Batman and Robin, which I've only seen bits of. I don't think I've ever seen the entire film from start to finish, so I can't say if it's one of the worst movies ever made or if it's whatever, but that definitely sent the franchise into a downhill spiral. And then Nolan brought it back with his trilogy, and then there was the whole DCU with Ben Affleck's Batman, and now we're here with our Pattinson's Batman. So there's a long legacy with Batman up to this point in the live action medium, in the theatrical medium, we'll say. And Robert Pattinson is the latest incarnation of the Batman character. And and I must say that the most interesting thing about the film is their approach to Batman. Of all the other Batman films, they have a particular viewpoint or a particular objective when taking the Batman character, which is to present him as a vigilante and as a hero, and really capitalizing on the superhero aspect. Him taking down criminals, him always having these like cool, expensive gadgets, being that of a classic type superhero. The sort of tropes that we know of today stem from characters like Superman and Batman because of rudimentary the cinematic history of superheroes lies in mainly that of DC characters, of Superman with Christopher Reeves and with Michael Keaton's Batman and Adam West's Batman as well. So, um, what I like a lot about this version is that it is not about any of that. It is not about him taking out criminals. It is not about him with really cool gadgets and stuff like that. Again, this is year two version of this character. So he's very young, he's very inexperienced. He's also not as skillful as Batman usually is. He makes mistakes. And what I like a lot about all of what I'm describing is that it creates a more human Batman and a much more um a much more of a care for looking under the cowl than on the outside, because most times when we look at Batman as a character, we're concerning ourselves, or at least the filmmakers are concerning themselves with what's happening on the exterior, what's happening on the outside with the fancy cape and the armor and all that. Not a lot of the films really dissect the inside. I mean, Nolan's is the closest, but even then, in Nolan's filmmaking, in terms of his sensibilities, there's a distance that's always built within his characterizations and his developments. His concern is more of technicality. And The Dark Knight, probably still being a great film overall, and probably by just Batman in general, it probably is the best Batman film because of what it's bringing on a technical level and a tonal level, and by just performances, it is probably and it is, in my view, more likely superior to a film like this. But what I appreciate more about the Batman than I do with something like The Dark Knight is again uh, how more human this Batman is, and how much more flawed he is compared to other incarnations. In other incarnations, he's just always superior, always on top. This one isn't, and I like that a lot about this particular Batman. And to add another point, it's the scariest Batman, easily by far the scariest Batman. The way that they built him up at the beginning, giving this sense of paranoia to him, always with the shadows, the way that they play with shadows at the very beginning, illustrating how he could be anywhere all at once and yet nowhere at the same time, giving again that that living nightmare feeling to Batman. I think they really illustrate that quite well. And throughout the film, his presence when he is Batman, when he puts on the cowl and the cape and all that, he is intimidating. His walk, his just aura, the way that he carries himself, our Pattinson and their overall performance in Batman specifically is quite an intimidating presence. Um, and just outside of talking about Batman specifically, Robert Pattinson, the film is quite beautiful on an aesthetic level. I love what they do with Gotham. I think that in general, this is the best look at Gotham that we've ever had. I love how gritty, dirty. This is like someone said it best. Like, this is the most rain that I've ever seen Gotham had. Is just drenched in rain, and I like that. It has more of an authentic look to how I would think Gotham would look like. It's not just more fantastical like Tim Burton's is, or just downright just a city like Nolan's is. There is something of a unique quality to this look of Gotham, but at the same time having a sense of realism embedded into it. And I just love the texturing. I like the palette of like just the framing of Gotham and the look of Gotham. The like I said, the palettes and just the tints. It's aesthetically really, really nice to look at. Um, a little deceptive because of some of the technology that they're using, with just some of the screens, the whole Mandalorian VFX thing that they're using. They use that a lot in this film. But, I mean, generally speaking, by just the eye, it looks really good. Same thing can be said about just like by the overall look of the characters. Again, Batman specifically, Catwoman, Penguin. I mean, just by makeup, costume, looks really nice. And for a large portion of the film, I appreciate the tone that's at the center of it. Again, there's something of a unique quality being presented here, where there is more of a humane element at play, and the tone definitely plays that up as well. There is that horrific, that horror that's also there as well, that's embedded throughout the entire film. There's been a comparison to Seven, which I'm not entirely sure if that feels accurate, because my impression of Seven was actually something not completely lighter, but had a little bit more digestible feel to it. I don't know. This has more of a sinister feel to it. There is something, there is horror in the center of this. Horror definitely is an inspiration in crafting the tone of Batman, and I very much appreciate that as an influence. But there's also this emotional edge to the film that I was not expecting. Um, and I appreciate that, and I like that how it informs the characters, specifically Bruce Wayne, and his relationships to people with Catwoman and Alfred, specifically played by Andy Serkis. By the way, I think Andy Serkis might be my favorite Alfred. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe Michael Caine might be my favorite. I'm not sure, but I appreciate what Andy Serkis brought in performance with Alfred. Um, but getting to the downsides though about the Batman is a lot to do with how it wraps up, and because the issue with this film is that it devolves into something familiar. It starts to become that typical blockbuster summer extravaganza where we have to have a epic fight at the end. We have to have these big spectacle like sequences, and I just think that it diminishes the setup of what we've had for the last 2 hours, this being a 3 hour film, which to my memory, what did not overstay its welcome. I don't remember the 3 hours being an issue. You can look back to my original review if it was an issue, but I don't recall it being an issue. Um, but I don't like how it devolves. It doesn't evolve, it actually devolves. And that's unfortunate because of just those first 2 acts building up a solid mystery. Which again is another very unique thing about this film, is that its focus on Batman is not just on a human level, it's also on his skill level. It's purely a detective story. The other stories, it's just him kicking ass. This is about him actually doing real detective work. We see him investigating, we see him working with Gordon, we see him, doing the things that typical detectives in film would do. It's properly a noir. It's not a film that flirts with the idea of noir and ultimately chooses that of action. It's a film that is committed in that sort of sphere, in that genre. But then it devolves into an action flick, and I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like how it ends up being an action flick at the end and not that of what it sets itself out to be at the start, which is to be that of a noir, a mystery, a layer of horror, you know. So it's unfortunate of how things end up. And I do feel that though that the performances on their own are good. It's when these characters interact do I find issues. I think that Robert Pattinson does a good job as Batman. I think he's one of the better looking Batmans, like on a visual medium. I think he's great looking. Um, but it's when we get to the Bruce Wayne element is when things are, I don't know, because the thing about this Batman is that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same. Traditionally with Batman, it's that it's a duality. There's Bruce Wayne who has a specific personality to him, and then there's Batman who is really more of Bruce's real personality. But in this, it's more than the same. And I wish that that wasn't the case. I wish there was some level of distinction, but I also can excuse it a little bit because of just what we're setting up as a character. This is meant to be year two, so he's not fully fleshed out yet. He hasn't understood what he should be doing in order to preserve his identity or his secrets. So I can kind of I can kind of excuse that because of what's set up. But it does make his Bruce Wayne not as um not as alive as his Batman is. But I guess the point in the characterization of Bruce Wayne is that his whole sphere is that of Batman, and he's yet to form that outside persona. He has yet to figure out who Bruce Wayne is. He's just that of Batman. And that's ultimately that of the film in general. The whole theme of the film is about discovering his true purpose, his true identity, and what he can be in terms of an image, in terms of an icon, or in terms of a, a symbol for his people, for his city. I love that. even though I don't like the third act much, I liked how they visually represent Batman's awakening, him falling into the water and that rebirth, I like that with the bell ringing, it's that was kind of neat. Um, so aesthetically, it's really nice. Performance-wise, it's good. I don't think that the chemistry really works well for me though. I like the singular performances. I like what Zoe Kravitz is doing. I like what Paul Dano's doing. I like what Colin Farrell's doing, Robert Pattinson, Andy Serkis. They're all doing good work on their own. It's just that when these actors have to interact in scenes, specifically Robert Pattinson and Zoe Kravitz, I'm just not feeling that chemistry. I feel their individual performances, but when I have to see them together in a circumstance, I just don't feel that particular circumstance, if that makes any sense. But I like their performances. I like what they're doing. I just don't find that the circumstance that they're in to be completely believable. So, so it's a case of the performers are doing well, but the chemistry itself isn't really there. So, um, but the performances are great. Aesthetically, it's nice. I like how it builds. I like narratively where how it flows, except when we get to that third act. Um, it's just a solid film, and I appreciate again something like this in the context of like Logan, or in to some extent Joker, where it is very distinct in this genre. It's not trying to be, until again we get to that third act, until things start to really become familiar. For a large portion of its time, it tries to be a noir. It stays within the vein of a detective story, which is something very different for this genre. Something very, I wouldn't say original because I mean it's source material that we know of, but it's like in the context of the genre of its offerings, it feels different. And I appreciate that more so than other films that I would bring up or would talk about in uh, in discussing the superhero genre. So I appreciate the Batman a lot. I do. And I appreciate it more as time has gone on because I just again seeing just how the superhero genre is as of late, I just I can appreciate something like the Batman for what it was doing. And I'm actually curious to see part two. I'm curious to see what Matt Reeves brings in expanding this world because I really like the world that's set up. And I am interested to see how that character evolves. And maybe we do get more of that duality that I'm looking for, maybe more of that distinction, maybe better chemistry, with the actors. But but a lot of the technicalities, a lot of the narrative, a lot of the tone, a lot of the atmosphere that's established, it does work for me quite a bit. And I hope that that translates to part two. But as it stands, I enjoy it. I enjoy the Batman. I don't love it. I still don't love it, but there's a lot of things to like about it. And then there's issues throughout it. Like I said, that chemistry isn't really there. I don't like what it ultimately becomes at the end, but there's still a lot of things that keep you interested just by the framing, just what you're seeing, by the performances on their own, by the general interest in its story, by the tone. There's a lot of other things to like about it, and that outweighs the negatives ultimately for me. And I say here saying that it's just one of the better offerings in the genre, especially in recent memory. It's just very distinct compared to what we're used to in this genre. And I'm interested to see what part two delivers. If it delivers more, um, or well, less, who knows? But as it is with this film, I enjoy it. I enjoyed it, and I enjoy it more as time goes on, and as me revisiting it just now, I admire it more in many respects, but still take issues in lots of other ways too. So. So those are my thoughts on the Batman. I enjoy it. I enjoy the Batman quite a bit. I don't love it yet, but I do quite enjoy it. I enjoy it more than the first time I saw it. The first time I saw it, I liked it, but the now revisiting it a few years later with certain scenes and just looking at it from a framing and all that sort of stuff, I like it. So that's the difference in the language. So in the tone of how I say I like it. So, but But those are my thoughts on the Batman. I've almost dedicated 20 minutes to this. Jesus. Um, but those are my thoughts on the Batman, guys. You guys have your thoughts on the Batman if you guys have seen it. And of course, this being Blind Tuesdays, I am not at home, obviously, so I'll be spinning the wheel on my own time. So whatever I land on, it will be right here. So that will be for next week's Blind Tuesdays, whatever the hell that is. So there you guys have it. So those are my thoughts on the Batman. You guys have your thoughts on the Batman if you guys have seen it, and whatever your picks are for next Blind Tuesdays, whatever the hell it is, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.